military.
On this episode of Who Dem.
Sometimes the most quote unquote pure position is not the smartest position, right? I'm sorry, I hate to break your heart, but that is a dumb strategy. And it is not moral to be dumb. It is immoral to be dumb because you just cost trans people rights to be in the military. And now they're worried about the bathrooms because you picked a dumbass strategy of dying on the wrong hill.
Hello and welcome to the Who Dem podcast. Today we have a very special episode along with Representative Cisneros and myself. We have Cenk Uygur, the founder and CEO of the Young Turks, one of the probably most prominent networks in the progressive movement. And Cenk, frankly, I think we should just get right into it. We're excited and thrilled to hear about what you're doing with Rebellion PAC. And I honestly just want to open the floor to start for you to tell us a little bit more about what's going on with your movement. And from there, I just want this to be a conversation about the Democratic Party and the identity of it.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I'm curious what your thoughts are going to be, Congressman. So Rebellion PAC is focusing on economic populism. So we got 6 things that are the core that we call the populist plank. We've got a couple of candidates already, and the idea is to prove out that economic populism can win. And so we're going to run in some purple districts and some red districts. And so Congressman would know about that. Some tough races where it's going to be real close. And the 6 parts of the plank are higher wages, meaning higher minimum wage, pushing up other wages. So then you've got lower drug prices, negotiating drug prices with Medicare, not allowing private equity to buy residential homes because that's driving up housing prices. And eventually they'll buy up all the houses and we'll all be renters. And that's the way that Americans mainly create assets. No more wars, money out of politics. So these are paid family leave. So this is the core of the Democratic message. But the core of the Democratic message is actually really popular. So all of those poll is 67% or higher. And so part of my philosophy is why not do the popular things first? And if you do that and you deliver for the American people, then they'll reelect you. And then you'll have more leverage and power. And then you can make more asks of them. Hey, did you like lower drug prices? Did you like that we delivered on that? Maybe we try a public option. Maybe we can get you to universal health care. So my goal is universal health care. But my job is to take it one step at a time, build power, build leverage until we could actually have a realistic chance at passing those things.
Mm-hmm. Can you just talk a little bit more about what you mean by economic populism, like just so for our listeners can understand what that is?
So I'm curious about your take on this too, Congressman, because I view the Democratic Party in 3 wings. One is the far left. So those are the folks, bless their hearts, that are into the culture wars and all that stuff. And sometimes you got to fight back against Republicans. So there's value there, and I appreciate them, et cetera. But that's not the camp I'm in, right? And then there's the what I call the establishment left. And so there we could have some interesting conversation. And that's the folks who are going along and nothing changes. And that's, in my opinion, Chuck Schumer, et cetera, who just very happy to do nothing. And so, and then there's the economic populist wing. So I think that's the wing that should win. I think that's the wing that is the most popular and the core of the party.
Who do you think best represents that wing in the Democratic Party right now?
Well, right now it's kind of a no-brainer because he already signed up for the group. It's Ro Khanna. But the reason he signed up for the group is because he's an economic populist. He's going around the country talking about rebuilding manufacturing and doing economic patriotism, and calls himself a progressive capitalist, and all that to me is perfect. But I think that the problem is money in politics, right? I think that's the overwhelming problem. Mm-hmm. That if you get rid of that you'll find that you've unshackled the Democratic Party, and at least 2/3 of the Democrats are very happy to be economic populists, right? But until you get rid of money in politics, we've got a long, hard fight in front of us. And I think we'll win that fight, by the way, though, this is all, so far, if you're at home and you're listening or you're watching and you think these all sound reasonable. And so that's a pleasant thing. And this is the core of the Democratic Party. That makes sense. but it's not going to be easy. So it's not going to be easy to win an R+10, which is Richard Ojeda in North Carolina 9, right? The next candidate that's coming out is in an R+17. That's going to be very, very difficult to win. But part of our point is that if you win in districts like that, then you prove to the Democratic voters, go with our team, okay? Because our team knows how to win, right? So that's the beginning of the fight. That's even the easier part. The hardest part, of course, is getting money out of politics. And that is going to be a bloody fight. Obviously, rhetorically, politically, not physically.
Yeah.
So, and then that's where the rubber hits the road, and that's where a lot of feelings in this town will get hurt. And if we have enough power and leverage to do that, I am looking forward to hurting those feelings.
No, there's definitely support for that. And I think when I was in Congress the first time, 116th Congress, 19 and 20, we did pass in the House the For the People Act, which is about ending Citizens United, getting the dark money out, ending, corporate donations. So there is support for it, right? And I think we do need that. And when I had the honor or the privilege of being able to travel and, talking, I went to the 75th anniversary of the D-Day celebration. So talking to, I guess we would say my French colleagues over there, right? Counterparts are there. And then talking to some of the UK counterparts, and they're just, almost taken aback by how much money actually goes into our campaigns, and even the length of the campaigns. I think in the UK, it's like they get like 2 or 3 months to campaign.
Not even.
And that's it. And they don't even do, they're like, I remember talking to them in France, the idea of doing TV commercials were like, oh God, that would never fly here.
Yeah.
So it is a lot different system here, right? But I think there is support to get that money out. We just, we knew we passed it in the House, but we knew it during that time with the Republicans who were controlling the Senate, it wasn't going to go beyond the House, right? But I think we still got to, and it is the nature of Congress to things work slow, right? But we got to keep going and going and going, and eventually that time is going to come where I think we can pass it.
Yeah, but Representative Cisneros, let's have an interesting conversation about that, right? So my theory is, and I'm not sure you'll like this theory, but is that the Democratic leadership is full of shit, and that they never wanted to pass that bill.
Yeah.
That they knew that it would get stuck in the Senate. So they were like, oh my God, look at us trying to get money out of politics. Bullshit. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want money out of politics. She loves money in politics. That's how she got the power that she has. So it's all smoke and mirrors. There was no way they were going to pass it in the Senate. Yeah. Even if they had 60 Democratic senators, they weren't going to do it because they all got there through money in politics. So they're not going to do it. Yeah. So so my sense is that you have to defeat the old guard, Pelosi and Biden. Now it's easier for me to say because I'm not in Congress. I'm not their colleague. I put you in a difficult spot, right? Because I know you got to get along, and I don't know how you feel about it. But I looked at that bill, and I was naive enough because we have nearly 100% track record on the Young Turks on predicting what bills pass and don't. And everybody thinks it's so complicated. Oh my God, no, it's not. Who has more money? Period. Well, whichever side has more money wins about 100% of the time, right? So in that bill, though, I was a little off. So apparently we're not at 100% because I thought that they would pass the redistricting and some of the parts of the bill that about voting rights, because that helps the Democratic Party, right? But the other half of getting money out, I was like, there's no chance, none, zero. And they knew they were going to kill it in the Senate. Nevertheless, some of the Democratic senators were like, no, not that part, right? Like, okay, I thought so.
I mean, they're two different bodies, right? And they don't act or work the same. But I would say there was good support in order to, I think, in the, I know in the House of Representatives to do that, and people got behind it and supported it. So I think the time will come. I think the Senate's, to be honest with you, I don't understand the way the Senate works sometimes and the way how they kind of operate. And I think, at that time, Mitch McConnell didn't really care about legislation. It was more about what judges can we get confirmed, because that's really what's going to make the long-term impact to the America that I guess he says that he wants in his mind. And so that's kind of what he focused on. And, and I would say Chuck Schumer kind of has been doing that to the same, right? When when Joe Biden was president and they had the majority in the Senate, it was about kind of judges where they focused on that. And it's not always legislation, but I still have faith in America, and I think the people want it, and I think we'll get there at some point. But it's going to take time. It is going to take time.
So I have faith in America too, but in a different way. So I have faith in the American voters to do a rebellion against the leadership of both parties. I don't have any faith in the leadership of either party. None. Zero. I mean, Joe Biden is a megalomaniac, sat there and said, oh, yeah, I'm young and dynamic and I'm going to run. If you thought Trump was a threat to democracy, brother, you should have gotten out 2 years ago. If I'm in mental decline and I don't get out and I think there's a threat to democracy and the other guy's a fascist, well, then, you're an enormous egomaniac and a narcissist. And so I'm not interested in you. And Joe Biden's first bill that he ever introduced when he was a young idealistic congressman, because people don't come in corrupt. People don't, and they don't think they're corrupt. Joe Biden doesn't think he's corrupt. Of course not, right? But he came in as a real guy trying to make a difference, and his first bill was money out of politics. And so I had like 2% hope that when he became president, that he'd think, I'm 84 or whatever I am. I'm 98. I'm 211. Like, let's go back to money in politics. Let me go out a hero. Like, if he got money out of politics, they would build statues of him all across the country, right? But no, he's just a creature of Washington. He got in, and immediately I talked to a Biden advisor on the Young Turks. On day one, they were talking about the second term. Second term, brother, you're 212 years old. What second term? Do it now, right? But Congressman, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So because I say that part about him coming in young and idealistic because I actually believe at least 2/3 of the Democrats mean well in Congress, right? And that if we actually somehow got money out of politics, and we talk about how, right, that we would have liberated them. Like that they hate sitting in the room for 4, 5, 6 hours making calls to raise money, right?
Well, yeah, it's the worst part.
Yeah.
It's the worst part of the job is having to go there and campaign and to do it, especially when you're in a tough race. Like when I was in the first time, right, it was pretty even RD district. We flipped a Republican seat and we, I had to spend half my week, was basically campaigning, calling people, asking for money, asking them to donate. And it's a crappy part of the job.
Yeah, it wears you down. We all know it. Like Cara Eastman's here. She's the executive director of Rebellion PAC. She ran in the middle of Nebraska in a purple district, leans Republican. But you got to call. You got to make the calls. You got to raise money. I ran for Congress. You got to make the calls, raise money, etc. And so if we got money out of politics, maybe even 2/3 of Republican congressmen would celebrate too. Like you're all liberated, unchained, actually do legislation, actually serve the people. But the problem is the leadership in both parties got there through enormous money in politics. That's their advantage, right? And so you're saying, I'm going to take your source of power away. And for leadership politicians, they are not going to be interested in you taking their source of power away. That's just a stone cold fact of humanity, right?
How do you then push the leverage on that power dynamic, though, as an organizer in the current state of American politics, which is, yes, essentially unlimited independent spending on campaigns because of Citizens United? You're trying to build grassroots movement, and you're trying to unseat establishment Democrats, as you call them. How do you push the envelope initially when you're trying to do something that is very unpopular to the people who actually have the power right now?
Yeah. So we have a plan. I keep launching these organizations because whenever I see something that people should do and nobody's doing it, I can't help myself. So I jump in and do it, much to my detriment in personal life, et cetera. But so I started Wolfpack 14 years ago, and that's to get money out of politics. And only one goal, totally nonpartisan. We don't care if you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent. We're not interested in. All we're interested in is money out of politics. Okay. Now, of course, it's because I started it a lot more people from the left, but we really are inviting even all the way through to MAGA because they say they're anti-corruption. They say they hate corruption. I know it's super ironic that they pick Trump.
It's
right?
the biggest hypocrisy in the world.
Yeah, it is. But here's the thing I realized, having done a lot of shows, both right wing, independent, left wing, et cetera, is that they don't realize they're being hypocritical. Like, because they're not hearing the same thing we're hearing. They're hearing right-wing media. And right-wing media says absolutely anti-corruption. And it's great that Trump got $75 million from a guy who the SEC was investigating and then let him off. Okay, so I'm kidding. But the reality is they never hear that part.
Right.
No right-wing media show has talked about how
talking about that on Fox News.
They're
So
talking about
So like, and by the way, that story is literal. Somebody put $75 million in the Trump media, which is worthless. So that's just a $75 million bribe, and got out of an SEC investigation. Another guy gave $1.5 million in campaign contributions to Trump, got out of a fraud charge. But now he's on to like Carlos Swanson, who ran Aussie Media, who's a progressive, right? But he committed fraud, and he was going to go to prison, and he was going to pay $76 million in restitution if he had it. And he magically got out, but Trump pardoned him. Why? So, like, I don't know if somehow Ozzy or Carlos or whatever got money to his meme coin or something, but or he was just like, look, anyone charged with fraud, he's like Bane, you know, from the movie Batman, except he just releases white collar criminals. Okay, so now but no right winger knows that. None of their media is talking about it. They're not listening or watching our media. Yeah. So they have no idea how corrupt Trump is. They think Trump is like some pure guy. Oh my God, he's worth $10 billion. But he came to help the average guy because he cares so much. But remember, guys, that's what their media is telling them. How are they supposed to know? Right. And remember, our media told us that Joe Biden was young and dynamic. And a lot of us believed it. So before we judge them too harshly, remember the insane things we believed, right? Like Joe Biden would shake hands with invisible people on stage. We could all see it. And yet an overwhelming majority of Democratic voters thought, nope, young and dynamic, the best candidate we have, the only guy who could beat Trump. So, but to go back to money in politics and how to get it out, the idea we came up with in Wolfpack was we can go around Congress. So because why? To your exact question, Max, it's a really good question. Most of those folks got there through money, right? So then you're going to take away their source of power, especially leadership, and leadership is worth 10 times a normal congressperson, sorry, okay, like in terms of power, right? And the ability to move bills, et cetera, right? So, but the Constitution is a beautiful document. I love the U.S. Constitution. And in it, it says 2/3 of Congress can propose an amendment, or 2/3 of the states can call for a Article 5 convention and propose an amendment. So we're actually going through the 2/3 of the states route. It's the only reasonable route. It's actually how the 17th Amendment got passed, direct election of senators, because they were 2 states away from 2/3, and the Senate panicked and was like, oh, yeah, we meant it. Yeah, we meant direct election of senators, because that was taking away their source of power. Before they were appointed, and now they had to go through elections. So the 17th Amendment is your blueprint for how to get an incredibly difficult amendment passed, especially an amendment that is against the power structure of the current Congress. So that's what we're doing. We actually passed in 5 states. Now, unfortunately, the Democratic Party has abandoned us. And
what does that mean?
So in the past, the 5 states we passed were all Democratic states. They weren't easy. I mean, passing in California, Illinois, New Jersey were super difficult. We also passed in Rhode Island and Vermont. But we got Republicans to speak on our behalf, Democrats to speak on our behalf, because at the state level, they're like, well, yeah, this is crazy. Like these elections, as you know, Congressman, cost so much money, an unbelievable amount of money, right?
Right.
Yeah, and so they were happy to go along. Then Pelosi called in Maryland, or we don't know that it was Pelosi 100%, but somebody in leadership called, and we were told someone in Washington in the Democratic Party leadership at the very top called to the State House in Maryland, and we're like, no convention. So their ostensible reason is, oh my God, in a convention, the Republicans can have more power. The Republicans already have unlimited power. Oh, what if the Koch brothers came into the convention? The Koch brothers already own Congress, right? And then so do the Mercers, and so do these guys, and so does Elon Musk, etc. So no, convention is the route to change, and we need change. So in order to do that change, we're going to have to, again, not physically, guys, not physically, but proverbially break a couple of kneecaps, right? And politically, and say, sorry, but we're going to pass this whether you like it or not. Because if your, leadership comes and tells you, no, go against your people, keep money in politics, well, brother, you're going to have to make a decision at some point, right? And then we're going to have to run against you, and we're going to have to defeat you, and we're going to have to do politics, right? So there was a Republican in New Hampshire, and he was the #1 opponent of Wolfpack, and he loved money in politics. And we went door to door to door to door to door, I mean, with almost no money, and we took him out. And so that we ended his career. And I love that. So like, this is like you start with a thing like, oh, get money out of politics. Everybody agrees, it's settled. But they don't realize that no one in Washington, almost no one in Washington leadership is on our side. The only way to do it is to end people's careers. And then people go, oh, that's uncomfortable, right? That's uncomfortable. Well, it is. That's politics. Some things are soft and persuasion, et cetera, and some things are hardball.
It's the same movement that happened on the Republican side, right?
Yeah.
Trump was uncomfortable at first, but he slowly broke people's kneecaps. We saw the debates.
Yeah, and that's another thing, Max. That's a great point, which is that so they say, oh, well, if you have a Democratic leader take over, they can't redo the party. Why? We just saw Trump do it. He did it for his own, again, megalomaniacal reasons and all about himself and self-aggrandizement. But he just showed you the blueprint for how to do it. So if we win the 2028 primary, which is our ultimate goal, you win in 2026, prove you can beat Trump, prove you could end his power, prove you could win with economic populism, then have someone in the 2028 primary win that fight, right? And then once you've got the party leadership, that's it. And if you're, okay, for example, let's say that, pick a name, right? And it definitely doesn't have to be Roe. Roe's a wonderful guy. I love him, a strong, smart leader, et cetera. But it could be anyone. I was on Breakfast Club with Charlemagne just 2 days ago, and we're talking about, could be Jon Stewart. It could be a non-politician, right?
It'd be great.
So let's just take Jon Stewart because it's a benign example, right? So I would, and if I'm advising him, I'd tell him, okay, first thing up, if he's president, is we're doing paid family leave. And put me in, coach, whether it's press secretary or I have no role, just I'm the enforcer, right? So what I would do is I'd go and do a press conference and say, we're going to pass paid family leave, and it's going to be unanimous because 84% of the country wants paid family leave. 74% of Republicans want it. Over 80% of independents want it. Over 90% of Democrats want it. The only people who don't want it are in this town, okay? And if you don't want it, I dare you to vote against it. I fucking dare you. And the minute you vote against paid family leave, I'm going to end your career. Okay? See, that's hardball, and that makes people uncomfortable. But that's the way to get it done. If you go, oh, please, oh, don't defy your donors, please. No, they're not going to defy their donors. There's no please. You either do it, or we say, here's a primary opponent, and you are gone. I'll put 10 million, 20 million, 200 million. You vote against paid family leave, and I'm going to end your goddamn career. You passed that goddamn bill. It's at 84%. It's not hard at all. They're not trying.
Yeah. I mean, again, everything kind of works in slow progress, right, in steps. But, we have paid family leave in California. I think it works great. It's very, before I ever got into politics, I worked for a company where people would get time off when they have a child, or if somebody got hurt, or even a family member got hurt and they needed time off, they were able to get it. Which this one kind of surprised me, but when I was in Congress in 2019, I actually thought, I guess maybe I was blinded because of California and family leave and thought it was everywhere, right? That federal employees didn't get, if they had a child, didn't get maternity leave to kind of spend time with we call it baby bonding there in California. But, these are positive things, right? And I think people do want them. And it was one of the things, we were able to get federal employees that in 2019 when I was at the Pentagon, and Congress passed a bill to allow maternity leave, not just the time off, but as I call it, the baby bonding part 2, where you could not only get your time for recovery, but the father and mother could also have time to spend time with the child too as well. And they didn't have to take it right at the, when the baby was born. Or even if they adopted, they were able to do that too, right? So, the one thing we were able to do, though, right, is Congress passed a law, but they kind of left it broad, and the military actually wanted to kind of make it run concurrently. I'm like, well, what good is that if you're having to take your maternity leave and your baby bonding at the same time? That kind of defeats the whole purpose, and I don't think that was Congress's intention. So when we actually wrote the policy, we kind of left it to where they could do that, and they didn't have to take it, which there was a lot of pushback, I will say, from the military, because they thought, well, how many man hours are we losing because of this? Because now people are going to get more time off. But the thing I don't think they realize, right, is that, at least in the military, is that now you're competing against industry out there, right? And when you have companies that are offering this on their own, again, right, we have it in California, but there are other companies that offer it around the thing. They allow that time. and you're not providing that benefit, why should I sign up for the military if I can go get a job over here?
Yeah.
And get these benefits that you're not providing to me. And we got to compete with you have to compete with the industry now, right? And so it is thing. And I mean, these are little steps that we're taking, right? But hopefully the purpose is to get to that. And I fully support paid family leave for, again, right? Not only when you're having a child, but if you get injured or, you have a family member that's injured that you need to take care of during that time.
If you're in the audience, you got to be wondering, wait a minute, if it's is this really right? Is it really at 84%? Because why couldn't you pass something at 84%, right?
Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, 80% of the NRA members agree that we should have background checks, right?
Yeah,
but yet
that's the next thing I was
people in politics that are blocking that from happening because the NRA. And I mean, right? You're making your point right here, right? Is the NRA throws a lot of money, I will say, on the Republican side in order to keep that from happening.
So look, that's another great example. NRA, right? So they used to give the Democrats and Republicans, and it was mixed on gun control. It used to be way more mixed. Now they stopped giving to the Democrats. Democrats stopped taking money from the NRA. Now all the Democrats are for gun control. I mean, look at that magic. You take the money out, and all of a sudden they all do the right thing, and they're for. And when we say gun control, it's just universal background checks.
Right.
In one poll, that came in at 97%. How could something at 97% not pass? And to your point, it was like, I forget if it was 80 or 90% of NRA members, gun owners. I think maybe over 80% of NRA members and over 90% of gun owners
believe in universal background checks.
Believe in universal background checks. You know why? Because they're not planning to commit a crime with their gun.
Right.
And they're like, oh, you want to know my serial number? Great. If it gets lost or it gets stolen, then you'll be able to get my gun back, right? The only people who don't want the serial number or the background check are criminals. That's it. And the NRA.
Right.
And who is the NRA? The NRA is not gun enthusiasts. It's gun manufacturers.
Right. They're the ones, who support
they're the ones who are supporting the NRA. They're funneling the bribes, legalized bribes to the Republicans, and that's why we have mass shooting after mass shooting. On paid family leave, I went on Patrick Bet-David's show, very right-wing, right? I have reasonable conversations with them, but there's clearly right-wing, clearly Trump supporters, right? And I asked about paid family leave. They polled their audience because I said, look, guys, don't you want more kids? Like, that's like a big right-wing conservative thing, right? Trump's got this fertility plan that he's doing now.
There was some guy on CNN today this morning talking about how we're not populating the country as we used to.
Yeah. So, but look, good. I got good news for you. Moms get 12 weeks off after having a baby. They're much more likely to have a baby, right?
Yeah.
So 75% of that very right-wing audience was like, yes, we want paid family leave. So why doesn't it pass? Because of if you notice what Congressman Cisneros said about the military, it's costing a lot of man hours. That's true. It does. I run a company. And so when people take the maternity or paternity leave, it costs us man hours, and it's difficult, and we got to adjust, and it adds to our costs, et cetera. So corporations tell the politicians, it adds to my costs. It costs me man hours. Kill it. I don't care if 218% of the American people are for it. I don't care. Kill it. And that's why it never passes.
But why not take more fiery messages on these issues? My issue as a 22-year-old who's been supportive of the Democratic Party as long as I've been paying attention to politics is that, look, I think I made up my mind about 90% of these issues when I was 12 years old. The problem is that when I think about something like gun control, like you just said, yes, it gives guns to criminals. So go out and say the message, Republicans are against crime. If you also are against crime, then be for gun control, be for universal background checks. It's the same thing with paid family leave. If you are for family values and you are for having more children born in America and our fertility rates, be against or be for paid family leave. It's the basic thing to do to allow someone to spend some time with their kid when they're born, for God's sake. But my perception of these things is that Democrats like to get all into the numbers and the weeds and play these issues as if they're way more complex than they are. And I just don't see it like that.
So I have a couple of answers and a question for Congressman Cisneros, because I think that's a really interesting point that you're bringing up. So first of all, I noticed, totally off topic, You said you're 22. Young Turks is 23 years old. It's older
Yeah.
than you. That's unbelievable. Okay, that was slightly depressing. Longest running show in internet history. Older than Max. That's going to be our new slogan. Okay.
go.
So now onto the issue. So, I ran for Congress in 2020 and because I got so frustrated and I'm like, I don't know, maybe if I go in there and I'm a bull in a china shop, maybe it could make a difference because I don't see any bulls in that china shop, right? And so I run. It's a long shot. It's like a 3-month campaign. It was Katie Hill's seat. She had to step down, and it was emergency run. And the Democratic Party was completely on the side of another candidate, so it was just super hard. Okay, but I learned a lot from that experience, and I went to the editorial board meeting at the LA Times. You try to get the endorsement. And it went great. It was supposed to last like half an hour or 45 minutes. We were there for an hour and a half. And I told my campaign manager at the time, I said, look, I know the LA Times not going to endorse me. The LA Times is going to endorse the main Democratic candidate. We all know that going in. So I'm like, but what am I going to do? Not go? I'm going to go. I'm going to do my best, right? And I came out, I was like, there's a 12% chance they might endorse me. Because that went so well, okay, all the way up to 12%, from 0 to 12, right? So I'm realistic. I know they're not going to do it. So, but then of course they don't do it, but they have a paragraph about me, and it says, while we agree with Uygur on money in politics and many other issues, we find his attitude too pugilistic, and we prefer civility in Congress. That's mainstream media saying, don't fight for your voters. It's unbecoming. It's unbecoming, okay? No. Be civil and lose with grace. That's what we want Democrats to do. Now, they don't know that they're saying that. They're good people. They're just in a cultural bubble, right? They're not like, now we'll tell the Democrats not to fight. No, those are probably Democrats on that board, right? They just got engulfed in this culture. So then that's the question I want to ask you. Congressman, what is it, like, what do they tell you guys that leads most Democrats to not fight back? I mean, so like when Jasmine Crockett or Jamie Raskin in his own way, et cetera, are doing these fiery things, and it's getting unbelievable attention because people are like, oh my God, a Democrat fighting back. And you might agree or disagree with how they're doing it, depending on who you are and how you feel about those things. But like, no question it's resonating because there's this incredible thirst. And the reason there's an incredible thirst is like Max,
Excuse me.
for example, Max in his lifetime has never seen a strong Democrat. Honestly, like I'm not sure you've ever seen a single strong Democrat. I don't mean like everybody's weak. I just mean like someone who, like Lyndon Johnson, right?
Look, I would have loved, and this is part of my answer here too, right? When I just ran my recent election, I had zero chance of the LA Times endorsing me in my race because they didn't even want to cover it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And this is the thing. And this is one of the reasons why I'm like, hey, maybe we should, where I reached out to these guys, it's like about starting a podcast. It's not that I'm not fighting back. And I went and met like with one of our Dem clubs. And look, I'm not a confrontational person in that sense. Right. And we all have different personalities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that I'm not fighting. And other people like me, right, that we're not fighting or that we're not speaking out or not doing this. But I can't control the media in the sense of like who they're going to cover. Now, I'm not, AOC. I'm not Jasmine Crockett. I'm not out there to kind of go out and say like things that are going to be confrontational. I'm not going to call out, I can be confrontational in my own way. And I think I've done that in some of my SBC or Small Business Committee hearings as far as like speaking out about how they're not actually bringing somebody from the SBA in to kind of, and so I refused to ask questions to the panel and just kind of laid out, I wish we had somebody from the SBA here, so I would ask them these 10 questions if they were. And that's my way of doing it, right? I had somebody tell me I need to go get arrested at one of our Dem Club meetings, right? Yeah. It's like, well, why aren't you out there fighting more? Why aren't you out getting arrested? And I'm like, well, I kind of spent my whole life trying not to get arrested. But, it is, but the thing is, it's not that we're not out there fighting. It's just, it's not being covered. And that was like one of the things. And actually one of the other people at the Dem Club meeting kind of spoke up and said, look, if you're looking to find it on CNN or MSNBC, it's probably not going to be there. But go to his, go to his campaign page. Go to his my rep page, our media page on our official page, right? Listen to the podcast, and then you'll kind of see him out there, kind of doing it and kind of speaking up. So that's always been my problem with the media, right? And it's not like, people think it's so easy to get on TV or to get out there and do that, right? But it is, we're out there pitching it all the time, but it's just, I'm just not one of the media darlings who they kind of want on TV all the time. And so it doesn't happen. So this is why we're here talking to you now on this Who Dems podcast, to try and get out there and kind of create our own thing, right?
Yeah, and I don't want people to get me wrong. Like there's different personalities, there's different strategies, there's different ways of fighting back. So I 100% hear you on that. And and sometimes folks come from a point of privilege and say, "Hey, why don't you go out there and get arrested?" Well, I mean, yes, but did you grow up Latino in California and try to avoid arrest your whole life? Did you grow up Muslim in America and are a little worried about getting arrested, et cetera? So, and I've done the civil disobedience to get money out of politics. We did the largest protest in the history of the Capitol. Actually, got 1,200 people arrested. I was the last one, and it's a fun little side story here. So we spend the whole days in the steps of the Capitol. Then we get arrested, and we get brought down to some like basement level thing, holding cell, right? And it's not really a full arrest. They have a different category, right? And I had a little bit of fun with it when the cop was asking me, "Do you have any gang names or aliases?" And I'm like, "Yeah, El Jefe."
Actually, I have a shirt that says that, El Jefe.
Is that right? Okay. Now you could just say, "Oh, that's Cenk's gang name."
Yeah.
So, anyways, and then since I was leading the proceedings, I didn't organize it. Kai Newkirk did. He's a wonderful, wonderful activist. And but they arrested me last, and they let me go last. So I haven't eaten all day. It's kind of a tough situation. Overall, not that bad at all. And it was actually one of the great moments of my life is when they start bringing me down into the basement, this giant holding area, and everybody else is there, and they start chanting "Cenk, Cenk, Cenk." I was like, ah, okay. So look, guys, go out there and do stuff because you might have wonderful moments like that, right? Yeah. Anyways, I come back home and I tell my son the story, and at the time he's much younger. And he said, "So, Baba, why'd you eat last? Like, why did you get arrested last, eat last?" And I said, "There's actually a saying, leaders eat last, right?" And then I asked him, "Do you want to be a leader?" And he said, "No. Why would I want to eat last?" And so to each his own, right? I get it. And so there's different things we can do and we can't do. But we've got to find a way to bring everybody together, their different talents and skills, and find a way to build a team and an alliance that actually gets the job done.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%.
And I would imagine that if you're going to be running a movement that involves putting in Democrats who are going to be for getting money out of politics, going to be for the messages of Rebellion PAC, not everyone you're going to be able to do that with is going to be the AOC or going to be the starting Twitter wars with whoever because it builds their name up. Some people are fighters in their own way, and it doesn't mean they're less effective. So how does that then play into your strategy of trying to win in purple and red districts while going against money in politics? Yeah.
No, there's a time and place for everything. And so you guys are totally right about that. So for example, I also co-founded Just Democrats, right? So we did that miraculous win, obviously AOC against Crowley, right? And the great majority of the credit goes to AOC. She was an incredible candidate. Then the next layer of credit goes to the people who were running her campaign and Just Democrats day to day. Shoykat Chakrabarti, Corbin Trent, Zach Exley, Alejandra, etc. So those folks did an amazing job, and they went all in on her. And in that moment, we knew that we needed a dynamic fighter like AOC, and we wound up. All the stars aligned. We all did the best we could, and we won, right? And great, wonderful. So in this moment, Khan is the first to join this one. But Ro's not a fire breather, right? Mm-hmm. He's not. He's like I announced it on News Nation and was on with Chris Cuomo and Geraldo Rivera. And even Geraldo, who was brought on to be the skeptic and say, yeah, left wing, not going to work, da, da, da. And he did a little bit of that to me. He's like, oh, Cenk, how are you going to get this to work? Bernie gets, all these people at a rally. You're only going to get a couple of hundred. I'm like, when did I say I was going to do a rally? Like, it has nothing to do with me, right?
Right.
But why does, but even Geraldo was like, oh, Roe, okay, he's practical. That makes sense. So why, in this time, there's different folk, different needs. We want the voters to think of, whether it's Roe or anyone else, oh, these guys are looking out for me, right? They're reasonable people who are trying to do right by the average American. That's a beautiful thing to show. Now, at the same time, there's the other two guys. One of them, again, is going to come out in a little bit. His campaign hasn't announced yet. But the guy who has it, North Carolina 9, Richard Ojeda, oh, what a fighter. Like, he had moved to West Virginia to be with his parents, and so he ran in a district in West Virginia. It's R plus 54. Okay, I mean, it's impossible, of course. He nearly won. He's a fire-breathing populist, right? And he was in the military, retired Army major, served for 16 years at Fort Bragg. That district has Fort Bragg in it, right? And he goes out there and he kicks ass for a living, right? But that's beautiful. You got Ojeda and you got Roe. And those are the two, like, you need each person doing their thing and to be a united team. So you get the guys saying, hey, we can't have this, we can't have the corruption, we can't have that, et cetera. And you have the guys saying, hey, look, I'm looking out for you. And we want to do the things that are popular, right? Yeah. So there's a place for everyone on the right team.
Yeah, I think Roe has had a, it's like navigating these things, right? Because he's had a very good, strong relationship, with Silicon Valley, which is the area that he represents. And he's kind of been pro-business in those areas, but yet he's also kind of been, I think like you said, right? He's been one of those guys that show you can do it both, right?
Yep.
It doesn't have to be either or, where you can support the family values and also kind of help support business. And I think, I always say, and I tell business too, right? Without business, we can't employ people. So, we want you to be successful. We want you to thrive. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we take care of the people at the same time, right? And I don't think any, like the Rebellion PAC, those are, like you said, right? They're strong democratic values. And I can't think of anybody who would kind of disagree with your platform there of those 6 issues of raising the minimum wage, FMLA, like more affordable housing. They're all good there, right? And I think we can get behind that. I think sometimes what scares people is the name Rebellion, right? Is that like they see that and they just hear that and they don't get beyond what's behind it, and they just think that, oh, okay, rebellion's not the way to go. We got to be, we do need, and compromise is good, right? And I think we need to find the areas where we can compromise and come together. But the rebellion sometimes, I think, scares some people.
Good. But I'm going to get back to that because that's a really important and interesting point. And it actually involves the changing of times. But first, I wanted to address what you're saying about business. Yeah. So look, in the sometimes progressives or the Bernie wing, et cetera, is viewed as radicals. And I don't think they're radicals at all. I think that, especially on these economic issues, intensely popular proposals, right? But some in our community, God love them, are radicals, right? So we, on the Young Turks, we've had a lot of debates over this. First, there's 2 different issues. There's the business issue, which is less of an issue. It doesn't come up that often. But I run a business. TYT, the network, is a business. It employs 70 people. So I know how tough it is to run a business. I know about the bureaucracy. I know about all these things that it takes to run a business. And sometimes people on our side are too idealistic. Oh, well, you know what? The fairies and butterflies and rainbows should run the business. Yeah, but they don't. That's not how it works. Yeah. Right. And you should do the business with no money. Okay, yeah, I should on a different planet. But on this planet, you need.
We're going to get to that point, right? In Star Trek: The Next Generation, right, where they did there, and there was no monetary value on anything, and everybody had access.
Yeah, exactly.
And live for the good of the people.
until you invent the holodeck,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to run it with money, right?
Right.
And that's how it works. So, and then you do the best you can under those circumstances. You don't compromise your principles or your morals. You say to an investor, for example, sorry, but you're not allowed to touch the editorial, okay? So what does that do? That eliminates a whole bunch of investors that might have wanted to come in and touch the editorial, so that you made it harder on yourself, but it's still doable. Then you work with a smaller set. And after you go through all that hard effort to make sure that it's as moral as it can be, don't come and tell me, why don't you run it on fairy dust? That's not realistic. That's crazy talk. If you got a decent person who's a wonderful progressive and who's putting money into a network and expecting like a normal return on investment, et cetera, take the win. Take the win. And the right wing has so much money. And in those cases, not even an investment. They're just giving it to them because it's for marketing and propaganda. They're like, here, take 23 million. I'm like, oh my God, what I could do with 23 million, right? So, okay, so that's the business end of it. But, you know, the issue that comes up way more often is crime, right?
Time for a quick message from our sponsors.
This episode of Who Dem is brought to you by Elect Dems Now. We all know that podcasts are the future. They give us the chance to connect with our elected officials like never before. That's why Elect Dems Now is committed to helping voters engage with the people who represent us. Supporting organizations that bring us closer to our representatives is crucial to advancing and advocating for the change we want to see. Whether it's $5 or $50, every donation to Elect Dems Now helps shape our future and ensures a country we can all be proud of. Your support sends a clear message to candidates and elected officials. Connecting with you means connecting with America. To contribute and make a difference, visit electdemsnow.org today. Your donation helps build a world where we are all connected. Paid for by Elect Dems Now, electdemsnow.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
So Defund the Police came out, and I'm like, guys, worst slogan in the world. Like, and there's a little bit of, I'm going to put a race in this a little bit. I don't know if it's fair or not, but there's a little bit of white liberal thing where they come in and they tell black and brown communities, oh, you guys want to defund the police. And they're like, when did you ask us? Like, did we say we wanted to defund the police? You just, you made that up, man. You never polled us. You never asked us. We never had an election. You just said that we wanted to defund the police. No, they wanted the police to stop brutalizing them. Right. They wanted reform of the cops. So like in New York, stop and frisk, 96% of the time they stop Latinos and black guys. Right. So can we look for actual crime instead of just black people and Latinos? Right. That's what we wanted. We covered on the show 100 times these terrible shootings. Pause for 2 seconds before you shoot. Now, I know that it puts your life in a little bit more risk. I know that. Right. But that's the job. It's a super hard job. That's why we love you and respect you. But you got to pause for a second and a half before you shoot a 12-year-old. So these are simple and fair asks. They went to defund the police like we were going to get rid of all cops. And the people that hated the most were black and brown communities. They're like, are you crazy? You going to take away cops?
No, they want their communities. They want to know that they can be safe. And you know, we can go back to my problem with the media again, right? Is that, you know, they started hearing that slogan and then that became all they focused on, right? It's like defund the police, defund the police. And then so that became, oh, well, that's what Democrats want, right? Democrats want defund the police. The vast majority did not want defund the police. But then you hear the police officers, right? You go talk to their unions and stuff, and they're like, oh, well, why are you for defund the police? And I'm like, I've never come out and said that I'm for defund the police. They're like, well, your leadership is. And I'm like, well, actually, they're not. You're listening to a small few people that are on TV all the time that are talking about it, and they don't represent the vast majority of the leadership, the members of Congress, or even the Democratic Party. For me, it's always been, why does it have to be an either or? Why can't we support our police officers and make sure that we have, you know, keep our neighborhoods safe, but at the same time, invest in community projects and really kind of help uplift it and to help keep kids off the street. It doesn't have to be either or. It can be both.
And look here, this is why I get into fights, right? This is why I'm pugilistic, right? Because I have to say things that are true and then people react back, right? So radical is a mindset. It's not policies. So when I say far left, I mean in that case policies. So I'm arguably far left on gun control, for example. I know I'm not in the majority of the country. I'm in the majority of the rest of the world that we shouldn't have guns, right? And or if you have them, as Japan does, put them in a locker somewhere outside the house. You will wipe away tens of thousands of deaths in this country, right? But I know it's not going to pass. So I got no problem with being on the far left, depending on your issue, et cetera, whatever it might be. But radical is no dissent is allowed. And if you must stick 100% to orthodoxy. And orthodoxy we created on Twitter 13 days ago, by the way, right? Defund the police was not a Democratic slogan at all. It just got invented in social media, right? Just a couple of years ago, right? But somehow it became orthodoxy. And you must hate the other side, right? So these are the rules of radicals. So for the radical left, and sometimes they're on the far left, sometimes they're actually old school moderates who are so mad at Trump, who hate Trump so much that they don't want any opposition to anything that any Democrat has ever said, right? So when I say, no, sorry guys, you're 100% wrong on defund the police. And Ilhan Omar nearly lost her primary last election, not this one, but the one before that, because 78% of African Americans were against the defund the police bill in her district that she was in favor of, okay? In Oakland, our friends on the radical left claimed there was no crime and that it was a Republican invention, that we were all imagining it, right? Oakland ousted a progressive mayor, recall, which is extreme,
Right.
65 to 35. And there is no more left-wing city in the country than Oakland. There is no more minority city in the country than Oakland, right? So Oakland was like, no, we don't want to defund the police. African Americans were like, no, we don't want to defund the police. We want safety and protection.
Right.
But safety and protection also means don't assume I'm the criminal.
Yeah.
Okay, go actually find the real criminals and protect me from those criminals.
Well, it doesn't mean, we don't have to treat everybody like they're a criminal, right?
Yeah.
Because of the color of your skin, that's all of a sudden we're assuming that you're guilty or you're part of the problem.
That's the problem. That's what we have to fix, not getting rid of police.
Right.
And so then they went to such extremes. We started getting into debates about abolishing prisons. I'm like, oh, come on, guys. Come on.
Right.
Do you want Trump to be president for life? I mean, abolish prisons. Are you insane? So I can't help but say, are you insane? So, but the reason why Democrats got stuck with defund the police label is because if any Democrat went out and said, no, defund the police is wrong, the radical left would attack and go, how dare you? You're for white people and you're for, the police and you're a pig and you're this and you're that and you're a traitor, right?
Yeah.
And then that scares people and they're like, what? I don't want to mess with that.
Yeah.
So they go and they can't shout from the rooftops, no, we don't agree with this.
I will say I never agreed with that, right? And I did speak out against it, and I never ever said that I was for defund the police, and I never ever will. But again, that doesn't get out there, right? Unless, the media is covering you somehow, that doesn't happen. But I think, what you're talking about, though, I think does happen. And we're actually seeing it very much on the Republican side now. That happens in politics. And it does, if it happens on one side, it happens on the other. But I think, there can be situations where people are afraid to kind of speak out. And I think you saw that in some of the local elections, like I think where the guy around that time, I think it was the mayor of Seattle who kind of came out, and said like, hey, we don't want to do that. And people just jumped all over him because like, oh my God, how can you say you don't want to defund the police? This is horrible. Look, we just want our police officers to treat everybody with respect and to make sure that we're not kind of going in there. And I think a lot of it too, right, is just the training. And when I talk to the unions and stuff, right, it's the training that we need to make sure that they are getting good training and doing that, right? And you're, like you said, it is a tough job. And sometimes I think with the police, right, it kind of becomes more of a, they do get a lot of people from the military, and they kind of bring that mentality out with them, right? But it's being on the police, like it says on the doors of the LAPD, right, to protect and serve, and that's kind of what we want. It's not a military organization, nor should it act or look like a military organization. They're there to protect the community, and I think that's what the people want.
What's interesting, though? I've had cops on the show who say that they were military and police, and they said, in their experience, the military was a lot more careful than the cops were.
Yeah.
And so That's scary, right? Because the military is fighting a foreign enemy and getting shot at as part of what is their actual day-to-day job. But the police have looser rules than we have in the military, which is and Congressman, I said a billion times on the show, we've got to fix the training. The training is the problem.
Right.
And it's not like I'm not asking a lot of cops. First of all, asking them not to target minorities is not asking a lot. But it turns out it's a big ask anyway, right? But the big ask is to pause for 2 seconds before you shoot a 12-year-old. Because to them, I'm asking them to endanger their lives, right? So I'm asking a big, big ask of the cops, right? But that's necessary. That's necessary for better policing, right? But an unreasonable ask is, why don't I defund you and see how you like it? And then they'll explain, look, I get it. There's some people that are watching or listening, tearing their hair out, going, no, it doesn't mean getting rid of cops. So I have two answers to that. One, I know. What you're saying is take some of the funding and give it to mental health professionals and some of that makes sense, right? But number one, if you do that, there's still not enough cops. You actually need to put money into mental health and cops, right? It's not to take one away from one and give to the other. And Karen Bass halfway tried that in LA with the fire department. Oops, right? Don't take away from the fire department in LA. Maybe you could do it in somewhere else where they don't have a lot of fires in Minnesota or something, but not in LA, right? So, but the second part of it is you called it defund the police, leading everyone to believe that you wanted to take all funding away from police.
Right.
So if you didn't want them to think that, why did you name it something? See, this is now I'm going to get in trouble. Why did you name it something so dumb?
Well,
Right?
it should have been demilitarize the police is what people wanted.
Okay,
People
that's an
would have
interesting
liked-
slogan. That's instantly a better slogan than defund the police.
Because the point was, and to play the devil's advocate in this conversation for a second, I'm not in favor of defunding the police, but I think people are upset when you have police academies and police departments getting contracts from defense manufacturers to build weapons to go and literally attack communities or use it for drug raids, right? I think all of us can agree that we need to enforce the
Well,
law.
there are some good. It's not that the police departments are paying this. Really, what they get is military surplus supplies, and there's I can't think of the rule that allows them, because police departments and stuff like that wouldn't be able to afford helicopters, which
Right.
they need, right? Unless they
It's-
could actually buy them from the military. So it's not all bad.
It's that. It's an incentive. There's rules about money from drug raids that police departments can pocket. The point is, there's a military-like incentive that existed in the police departments, and I understood why people were so upset, because I think there's a fair argument to be made that it was leading to needless deaths at the hands of law enforcement. But you're right. It's a message that doesn't work, and messages matter, and that's why we're having this conversation, right?
Yeah.
And it's also the point that it's not just the radical left to blame in this conversation when we're worried about everyone dogging on Democrats because we're talking about defund the police or we're in disarray. It's also right-wing media, because the fact is they're not going to talk about the Democrat in 2020 who's saying, no, actually, I don't want to defund the police. We should fund the police. We need a strong law enforcement system. They're going to go and they're going to talk about the people who are shitting on them for even saying that in the first place and saying, look at how disorganized and dysfunctional the Democrats are. And that's why it's a shitty game to play, because you're right. There's millions and millions of dollars being put into the organizations that can say those things because there's a financial interest for those messages to be out there. And that's not the same for this. It's not the same for the Young Turks, right? And I think that's another problem in our media space that needs to be solved if we're going to have actual power behind movements like the Rebellion PAC.
So I'm going to give you two examples of what you mentioned, but first I want to talk about the police.
Yeah.
So look, if you want to see someone yelling at the police online, just go to the Young Turks, okay? So there's like endless videos of me being furious at the cops, right? So there's nothing wrong with being furious at the cops who shoot Tamir Rice in Cleveland in half a second. He's 12 years old, has a toy gun in the park. Ask the kid, hey, put your hands up. Don't go and murder the kid on the spot, right? And Benjamin Crump was wonderful in saying that if it wasn't for the Young Turks, Trayvon Martin wouldn't have become a national story. Poor kids going to get Skittles and iced tea. Some idiot jumps on him, shoots him, kills him, and now he's the bad guy. I hate it. I hate it, right? So there's 1,000 things to criticize the cops on. And the militarization, I hear both of you. Congressman, you're right. They do get it cheaper, and it's really hard to resist. And hey, look, it's like a tank, and then it's kind of a cool toy, right? But Max, you're right. When Black Lives Matter was happening, and there was some unrest, right, in 2020, there's tanks rolling down the streets of L.A. Like, what is this? No, it's overkill.
They don't need a tank.
Yeah, they don't need a tank. It's overkill.
The thing I have a problem with when I talk about the militarization, right, is I remember one time we were at a rally, and there were, and I won't say what department it was, but there was a law enforcement agency there, and they were all dressed in fatigues, and I'm like, why? That's not. This isn't like gonna roll into like some kind of thing where it's gonna be a big old riot or anything like that, right? It's like your police officers wear a police uniform.
Yeah, and that's so right.
Because I think when you go into communities like that, then that kind of gives the wrong image where it's like, oh, okay, you're coming after us.
We're accidentally changing the culture of policing to make it seem like the citizens are the enemy. Because in the military, you're occupying a different country, right? You're attacking an enemy or you're defending yourself. And so that's a different mindset. And when you apply that to policing, that's a disaster. Like, so it's slowly creeping in for logical reasons, but the tank is cheap, the helicopter I could use, etc. And I got fatigues. But then next thing you know, the culture has changed and the citizens are no longer yours to protect and serve, but the things that you have to like be on guard against and the people you occupy, right? So that's why we have to be super careful about that. But look at how I just addressed it without saying take money away from the cops, without saying that the cops are the enemy. What we're saying is let's fix it. Of course there are problems. Are you like anybody who says there aren't problems is crazy, right? So what do you do with problems? Do you blow up the building? No, you fix the problems, right? You address the things that need to be addressed. And by the way, we haven't done that enough. And also, I'm super tough on Obama because I thought he had this moment where he could have made giant change and he only did a little bit of change. On the other hand, I'm cognizant of the fact that sometimes it's harder than you think from the outside. So this is an amazing fact. Obama lost more approval ratings on this issue than any other issue in his entire 8 years. What was it? It was when Henry Louis Gates, the black professor at Harvard, got stopped in front of his own house by the cops. As he was going into his own house, they arrested him, right? And it was dumb. They could have just said, hey, do you have a key to the house? Oh, I do. Here it is, right? Hey, do you have an ID? Can I see a picture of you inside the house? I mean, so there's 1,000 easy ways to handle this without arresting the Harvard professor, right? One of the most respected African-American professors in the country. And Obama had the natural reaction. He's like, that was dumb of the cops to do that, right? It's benign. I thought it was the most benign thing I'd ever heard, right? He lost like 19% approval ratings because they're like, how dare you say, I'm doing that from memory, but it was the biggest loss he had. How dare you say the white cop was dumb for arresting the black professor at his own house?
Yeah.
So sometimes we don't know how hard these race relations are, right? And sometimes it's hard for politicians to go to where we want them to go. So I'm cognizant of that. I really am, right? So I wish he'd push for more, but I understand why, especially as a black president, he had trouble doing that in some of these instances. Okay, so now having said all that and all the difficulties and challenges, et cetera, now let's go to something else you brought up, Max. So we chose to die on all the wrong hills. Because look at all these things we have to fix and look at how hard they are to fix, right? And instead of doing the hard work of fixing those things that the American people would love to be fixed. So for example, again, when I talk to right-wingers and I talk about police abuse, you'd think that they're going to be like, oh, no way, yeah, cops, Blue Lives Matter, et cetera. And a lot of them are, right? But when I tell them about, hey, did you guys see that shooting when it was a white guy in a hotel room and he's crawling in the hallway and the cop tells him, put your hands up, put your hands down, and then shoots him and kills him, right? When the guy didn't do anything wrong. They're like, yeah, I did see that. That was effed up, man. And I'm like, see, they shoot too quickly, right? And they're like, yeah, they do, you're right. So that's a way of actually addressing the problem. Instead of making them the enemy, right? Find a way to make them allies. So what do we do instead when it comes to my friends in the radical left, right? They go, that's it, trans sports and we're at professional leagues have to be forced into allowing trans women to compete in women's sports. I'm like, okay, guys, that's a Republican trap. That's a right-wing media trap.
Yeah.
First, they tried, hey, we hate gay people. And that worked for a long time. Then it stopped working. Then they're like, okay, now we hate trans people. And that worked for some time. And then that stopped working. They're like, okay, let's make sure that they don't go in the bathrooms they want to. That didn't work. They're like, let's kick Trump in their first term was like, oh, let's kick them out of the military. People are like, yeah, that didn't pull that well, right? Because like these brothers and sisters are volunteering to lose their life to protect us. Yeah. I mean, right? So that didn't play well. So they lost on that. So they kept digging and digging until they found this super obscure thing that affects like 20 people out of 330 million people, trans sports at the professional level, right? And so
he really has a knack for making the election about just the 3 things out of the 20 issues that Republicans actually have support on, even when it's something like trans kids in sports.
That's exactly why I'm bringing it up, Max, because you're absolutely right. Right-wing media digs and digs and digs until it finds the single most unpopular issue that anyone on the left has, even if it's 3 people on the left, right? Yeah. So that's not the issue. The issue is when we fall into that trap.
Yeah.
Stop falling into these traps. So you just but nope, my friends on the radical left will never agree to that. No, they're like, that's it. You're hurting vulnerable communities. This is the most important issue. We should run the whole election on trans sports. No, because what are you going to do? Not only are you going to hurt all of us, right? Because then Trump's going to win and the Republicans are going to win, et cetera. But you're actually also hurting the trans community. And you're doing it for your own ego, etc. Because what I said, guys, they're going to walk you backwards. If you go to that extreme and you fall into that trap, they're going to walk you backwards. And what happened? Now we're having issues with trans people in the bathrooms and trans people in the military. We walked backwards. Sometimes the most quote unquote pure position is not the smartest position, right? I'm sorry, I hate to break your heart, but that is a dumb strategy. And it is not moral to be dumb. It is immoral to be dumb because you just cost trans people rights to be in the military. And now they're worried about the bathrooms because you picked a dumbass strategy of dying on the wrong hill. That 79% of Americans are against trans women in girls' sports. I'm in favor of high school. That's a very unpopular position. But like that, trans girls should be able to play in women's sports, in girls' sports in high school. Why? Because I don't want them checking the genitalia of kids. That's crazy and creepy. And you could say that, and maybe you could win on that issue. But am I going to run a campaign on that issue? No, you're crazy to run a campaign on that issue.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think 100%. Right, is that they've kind of made that the issue, and some people felt that they had to defend it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The thing that we've talked about, Max, on the show really is, whenever that's kind of brought up, I'm like, I don't want to talk about like the less than 10 people in the NCAA. I'd rather talk about the thousands that you're trying to kick out of the military.
Yes.
Who, because they're transgender, right? Who you keep telling me that you're gonna have a military based on merit. We had all these people are serving honorably. They're getting good evaluations. They're getting good fitness reports. They're doing their job. But yet, you're not kicking them out based on merit. You're kicking them out based on because you don't like them, basically.
Yeah, and what's more DEI than kicking people out of an organization because they choose to identify a certain way? That's real DEI right there.
Yeah, 100%. Last thing on that is that I'll use my own ethnicity and my own background, right? Mm-hmm. So do I want Palestine to be free? Like, God, that breaks my heart what's happening to the Palestinians. And everybody who watches me in any context knows that I'm, as fervent as you could be on that issue, right? So they do a protest here in D.C. and they burn an American flag and they write Hamas on one of the statues or monuments. You think you're helping? You're not helping. Like, what did you do when you burned the American flag? You felt good because you're so radical, man, and you F America and stuff, and you have that emotional release. But you just fucked our movement. Mm-hmm. Right? Because if the American people view Palestinians as against America, then they're not going to root for the Palestinians. You have to frame Palestinians as human beings just like you, just like your neighbors, and that the American spirit would want Palestinians to be free and have a real country that's sovereign and a democracy and all of those things. You frame it in a way that helps the Palestinians, but when you write Hamas on a statue, everybody hates you. But I don't mind that they hate you because you're an idiot, right? But I mind that then you smear the movement with such counterproductive radical idiocy, right? Do not burn American flags. Yes, you have a right to. Yes, I understand that, but don't. Right. I have a right to do a lot of things that I shouldn't do, right? So please stop hurting these, they love to talk in these talks of like, vulnerable communities. And so again, I get into these fights with some folks on the radical left, and they say, oh, Cenk, my position is right. So if you are against my position, then you are hurting vulnerable communities. You're using them as human shields, okay? So no, my community, Muslims, want Palestinians to be free. We want them to stop getting slaughtered by Israel, okay? So when you burn the American flag, you are helping Israel to slaughter more Palestinians because you are turning off the huge majority of Americans to the cause of helping Palestinians. Yeah. So I'm not going to let you hurt vulnerable communities because you have this ego kick and you want to be the most pure. It isn't pure. It's stupid. And I'm going to fight back to make sure we save those lives.
Can I tell you about my, again, and I'm talking a lot about my distrust of the media and things like that, right? But I think that one of the things, and even though we're starting this podcast and it's the new media platform, and like you said, you had the Young Turks and you've been the longest running podcast out there. And I know you're, like I said, my wife's a big fan and she's watching you on TikTok all the time. The reason I cannot stand social media and things like that is because I think there is, they can control the logarithm and kind of do it, right? And I think the Russians do kind of play in this, and I think the Chinese do play in this, where they kind of put out these messages and things to where, people see these things and it's not really fact, right? It was, people started commenting on like bin Laden and kind of saying like, oh, maybe he wasn't such a bad guy. Yeah. Or they kind of see the things like about like Hamas and it's like, well, maybe Hamas isn't so bad or anything, right? And I think, look, the Palestinian people, Hamas, Hezbollah, two different things, right? And we have got to separate them from there, right? The Palestinians are not Hamas. They are not Hezbollah. These are radical people that are trying to push their agenda and I think are using religion in order to try and do that. But I think when some people kind of see these things, it is kind of giving them things not really based on fact, but more of what they see on social media in 20-second bites that kind of, really, it's not really good research. It's like you might have had to go do in the past in order to kind of find things out and find out facts. And you're kind of relying on these 20 seconds to kind of really format your opinions. And sometimes they're not really what, we kind of see as right? Because like you said, when people are, why are they spray painting Hamas on there, right? It's because they're seeing some video on social media, whether it be Twitter, TikTok, or whatever, that's given them a distorted view of what Hamas is.
If I'm in a protest like that and I see somebody doing that, I think there's some percentage chance that's an Israeli agent. Like that, because that is how counterproductive it is to do something like that. Because if I was Israel, I'd go pretend to be a Palestinian protester and burn an American flag because it'll set back the Palestinians 20 years, right? So that's how counterproductive that strategy is. So first of all, you're right. Social media is what it is, and people get it. They form their opinions in 20 seconds. I think the Russians and the Chinese are a much smaller factor than the algorithms of those different social media platforms, and those are the things that really drive media these days, et cetera. But we got to play in the battlefield we have, not the one we wish we had. Yeah. So then you got to do good 20-second videos and messages, etc. So then when you go to do that, okay, then think through what is going to be more helpful, right? So we started talking about Republican and right-wing media traps, right? Sure. So are you in favor of Hamas as a trap? Okay, so if you say, oh, they're freedom fighters and they stand for the Palestinians, you've fallen right into that trap because Now they think Palestinian equals terrorist, right? And then they'll say, okay, look at the 36 kids Hamas killed on October 7th, etc. So Palestinians are baby killers, right? You don't fall into that trap, okay? And by the way, be a decent moral person. Those 36 kids that died on October 7th is heartbreaking. That's terrible. It's wrong. What Hamas did is wrong. Instead, flip the frame, okay? And so it doesn't mean you don't fight back. This is really, really important. It's how you fight back. And you've seen on this podcast, if you're new to, my style, right? It's not like I'm shy. It's not like I don't fight back. It's not like I don't pick fights. It's not like I'm not pugilistic, right? So then how do you do it? You say, you're right, Hamas is terrible in what they did to those poor 36 kids, right? That is why when Israel kills over 15,000 Palestinian children, your heart should break for them as well, and on a mass scale. So, and now I go super harsh, but in a way that makes sense. I go, okay, so Hamas are terrorists. I totally agree. Killing innocent civilians on purpose is terrorism. We all agree. Israel has killed over 51,000 people at a bare minimum now. They claim it was by accident. They killed over 25 to 30,000 men, women and children, just women and children. That's a stadium full of women and children. And you're telling me the IDF is the most incompetent military in the world? And golly gee, we just murdered another couple of thousand children. No, they did it on purpose. They're terrorists. Israel is a terrorist state. Okay. Now, that's super harsh.
Very harsh.
Right? But wait a minute. We all agreed to the definition of terrorism just a second ago. Right? And that is the definition of terrorism, and there's no question they're terrorists. Yeah. Okay? So now you flip the frame. You're not being any less harsh. In fact, you could argue that I'm harsher than what the quote-unquote radicals are doing, right? But you did it in a way that makes sense. You did it in a way that draws people in. Terrorism is bad. Killing innocent civilians is bad. So let's stop both sides from doing that. But you have to mean it, and you have to be moral. Yeah. I don't want Israel to suffer. I want Israel to be a safe haven for Jews. Yeah. I want both states to be beautiful and free and sovereign and peaceful. You have to mean it in your heart. I don't hate Israel. I definitely don't hate Israelis. I just want peace for both sides.
Yeah, look, I've always been, and you can look at my record, a strong supporter of the sovereignty of Israel and to keep it, I think they deserve to have their home, but I think the Palestinians should also have their home as well. And I think the Donald Trump video of a resort, some people are like, well, what can it be like Dubai? And it's not that, his vision of that, right, is not for the Palestinian people. It's more for him to kind of, how can I build this up and put Trump hotels all over the place and kind of me profit from it in keeping the Palestinian people down. And that's what we do not want. We want them to have control of their own government, right? We want them to have free elections. Which, hasn't happened in a long time, but it is something that we got to keep fighting for and I keep working towards and to make sure that we protect the Palestinian people, protect, like you said, the Israelis as well. And so.
Yeah. So let me say one last thing about that and transition to something that Congressman just mentioned. So, look, I say at the end of the long debates, I had one at UCLA, one at Oxford. I said, when you're on TV, it's too quick, right? Yeah. A lot of times. But on the longer debates, I say at the end, and sometimes I'll say it on Piers Morgan and stuff, which is, if at the end I got you to hate Israel or the Israelis, I didn't do my job right? Mm-hmm. Because the answer isn't to hate Israel. The answer is to stop the hatred. Because once you stop the hatred, that's when you get to peace, right? And Martin Luther King was right. Hatred never drives out hatred. Only love can. Okay. Yeah. And so that's where we got to get to. If I can get the Israelis to see the Palestinians as Israelis, they'd never bomb. They wouldn't kill 51,000 Palestinians. There's no way in the world they would do that if they viewed them as humans just like Israelis. And same for Hamas. If they saw the Israeli children like they see Palestinian children, they'd never kill them, right? So if you end the hate, you end the war, and you get to the right place. So,
I had actually one question on you before we move on from this issue, because you are trying to run a movement within the Democratic Party, which, to be frank, there's a lot of fracture within the Democratic Party on this issue. There may be someone who shares a lot of your values, but let's say would be defined as a Zionist by supporting a two-state solution for Israel and Palestine. Is that a red line for you in terms of working with someone in your movement?
No. So at Rebellion PAC, me and Brianna Wu started it, and we're on the board. Cara Eastman is the executive director and runs the group. But Brianna and I started back in 2020, and she is ardently pro-Israel, even in the midst of all of this. And I'm ardently against what the current Israeli government is doing, right? And so people say, well, okay, then I don't want to support this organization because Brianna's in it. Or if you're on Brianna's side, I don't want to support this organization because Cenk is in it. First of all, it's a free country, right? So I get it if that makes you uncomfortable and you don't want to give your hard-earned money, $5, $10, because you just can't stand one of our opinions because you're so much on the other side. I get it. On the other hand, guys, look at what we're doing. We said at Rebellion PAC, we're focusing on the 6 core populist economic issues. Yeah. And you are allowed to disagree on other issues. And look at the 2 co-founders. We massively disagree on a super important issue. But we're Americans and we're still working together. That's a powerful message. And some people don't like that message. I get it. But I think a lot of people will like that message. And we're doing it through real practical action.
Yeah.
And so, by the way, when our candidates run, Ojeda's not going to agree with me on gun control in North Carolina 9. No, there's no purity tests. We're doing the 6 most popular things in the Democratic Party. If you're not here for that and you're here to fight on every single issue and die on every hill and do purity tests, this is not the group for you. And by the way, then I encourage others, do your purity group, right? Plant your flag and say, we are the most pure group. We're going to run in primaries. We're going to run in general elections. We're going to run on every policy invented on Twitter 13 seconds ago. And then see how you do in the elections. Okay, God. And by the way, I love it. I love primaries. I love competition. I love democracy. So if you guys are right and you represent the majority of Democratic voters, then you win. And great. I'm happy with it. They're asking me to take Ben Glebe off the air on TYT, right? So Ben Glebe is also very pro-Israel. He and I get into heated debates on the show. We yell at each other, and then we hug afterwards, okay? And they say, how dare you? He's a Zionist and stuff like that. Well, brother, for my whole life in media, which has been now nearly 30 years, right? I was so worried about speaking out on behalf of Palestinians, right? Because it's not an easy thing to do, especially until recently, right? And I would still do it because I'm pugilistic and I can't help but do the thing that I believe in. But would I get calls from management from time to time? Yes, I would. And I was always on the razor's edge of getting canceled for not saying Israel is God's given ally and the greatest thing on earth, and we should give them 300 billion more. If you don't say that, you're going to get canceled for about 90% of my career, right? So now you want me to do likewise for the Israeli side, to cancel them because of their opinion on Israel. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. We're going to have a real conversation, and you guys are going to make up your mind. And if Ben convinces you that, hey, you know what, maybe they should keep going, then he convinced you. But he's probably not going to convince you because it's not a tenable position at this point, right? So let everybody say their piece. Do not shut down marketplace of ideas. Do not shut down speech. Yeah. And if you're right, if you believe in your cause, you don't mind other people speaking out at all. Because the only people who want to shut down speech are the ones that are a little afraid that they might be wrong.
Right. I think we need to have those difference of opinions, right? We need to be able to come together and kind of debate the issues and talk about things and know that we're not going to agree on every single thing. But that doesn't mean we can't make progress. That doesn't mean we can't get things done. And I think what we're kind of seeing on the Republican side is really the exact opposite right now, is that, hey, if you're not in line with Donald Trump and everything he's doing, then we've got no place for you, in our party. And that is not democracy.
Yeah.
That is going in a completely different direction.
So let's build off of that because so now I voted against Donald Trump. I'm very anti-establishment, and on top of that, Democratic position Biden and Kamala Harris on Israel was atrocious. Okay, just blank check, give them whatever they want, never check them, etc. Right? I couldn't stand it. So why did people often ask? Well, so why did you vote for Kamala Harris? Because Donald Trump, on the core issues, said he didn't want to leave after he lost. I'm already done with him. Mm-hmm. Like, no, you lost. Get the fuck out. Okay. Yeah. So if you're going to try to stay in an unconstitutional way, but on top of that, afterwards, he said, we should terminate the Constitution. Nah, we're not terminating the Constitution. I'm never voting for a guy who said we should terminate the Constitution. Never, ever, ever, right? And then on the Israel-Palestine issue, I'm like, you guys, you schmucks, Miriam Adelson is his top donor. The Adelsons have, Sheldon, before he passed away, her husband, now Miriam, have given Trump $337 million. And Miriam is an American citizen, but she's also an Israeli citizen. No problem. I'm Turkish American. I get it, okay? But she's hard right-wing, pro-Netanyahu Israeli citizen, okay? And she is telling Trump, and this is reported by Israeli press, not by me, saying you must let Israel annex the West Bank, let alone Gaza Strip. You think Trump's going to be better than Kamala Harris? You're on crack. No, he's going to do whatever Israel tells him to do because he'll do anything for money. He's a two-bit con man. So if he gets, Miriam's going to give him $337 million, he's going to be like, of course. And I would like make up these outrageous, outlandish things that Trump would do. And I undersold it. Right? As it turns out, he comes in, oh, the Trump Riviera. We'll come in and we'll move them all out. That's ethnic cleansing. Yeah. That's not a pleasant thing. Oh, they'll live in a beautiful place. No, they won't. They'll live in tents in the Sinai, in the desert for the rest of their lives, right? Yeah. And then we'll own it. We'll own it. What the hell does that mean? We're not going to own it. We're going to hand it right back to Israel, okay? And then when he said, we're going to clear out the unexploded bombs for them, I was like, wow, you're an idiot. Because now you're going to lose the right wing, okay? And he did. So I've been going on those shows, and what do? I make my case. I'm not shy about it. And I say, guys, look, he's going to tell you that we should help Israel both in Iran and in Gaza, and we should fight their wars for them, and we should keep giving them money. Is that America first? No one can say it's America first. No one can say it, right? So what did he do? Not only did he do the outlandish Trump Riviera thing, then he started kidnapping people with masked, plainclothes officers because they criticized, they wrote an op-ed against Israel. And now you're arresting and deporting people. And what do I ask the right wing? I say, wait, weren't you guys against cancel culture? And now you're canceling people. They're literally canceling their diplomas. They're canceling their freedom. And they're canceling their visas, citizenship, resident alien, et cetera. And so this is as big a cancel culture as you can get.
Well, they were against it when they were, I guess, trying to cancel them, right, in their opinions.
Yeah. So now some percentage of them, a significant percentage of them, I don't know if it's a third, a half, whatever it is, are never going to see that hypocrisy, even if you tell them. And they're not going to see the irony, right? But there is some percentage, especially because remember, Trump voters are not all MAGA. He won the popular vote. He won all 7 swing states. There's a ton of independents in there who just didn't like inflation and thought the border should have been closed. That's it. Those were the 2 main driving things. They didn't ask for him to run for a 3rd term. They didn't ask him to kidnap people on behalf of Israel. Right. They didn't ask him to take away due process. That's why I said I piss off everybody, right? So I'm on X, and I have now a bunch of independents that follow me, even some MAGA that follow me because they appreciate my honesty, right? They're like, look, man, I don't agree with you 90% of the time, but I get that you're not full of shit. Right? Like you just say whatever you think is right. And I appreciate that. And that's beautiful. So, okay. So for the independents that voted for Trump, when I say, hey, cancel culture, they go, yeah, wait a minute. That is cancel culture, isn't it? And I say, look, we're kidnapping people and ending our First Amendment rights because First Amendment applies to everyone in the country. So if you take it away for someone who has a green card, you're taking it away for citizens. Right. And you're doing it on behalf of another country. So
he's already said he wants to be able to, he thinks he has the right to take citizens who don't agree with him and send them overseas.
That's right. So and we told you that it would apply to citizens, and then that schmuck comes out and goes, oh yeah, maybe we do the homegrowns. Yeah. So, okay, now you're going to take away American citizens, put them in a dungeon in El Salvador without due process, while at the same time you're kidnapping people and sending them away based on the commands of a foreign country. Okay, does that sound like America first? And for a significant chunk of the people who voted for Trump, they go, yeah, you're right. That doesn't quite sound like America first. And I say, didn't you guys say freedom of speech, freedom of speech? Wasn't that the #1 thing you guys wanted? The freedom of speech, right? America, the Constitution. Absolutely. She wrote an op-ed. She didn't even go to a protest, the one in Tufts, right? And the other guy, anti-Semitic, he went out and did went on TV to say, don't be anti-Semitic. Like, so these two guys, or these two people, one was a woman, the other one was a man, unquestionably were just because they were critics of a foreign government.
Yeah.
So isn't that against freedom of speech? And yes, some percentage of Trump voters go, you're right, it's against freedom of speech. And what has now started is a revolt. So the most critical guy, there's tons of wonderful people doing great work on it, but the most critical guy, in my opinion, is Dave Smith. Dave Smith is a libertarian who voted for Trump, and he's Jewish American. He's super smart, principled guy. And he's like, no, this is a foreign government. I'm drawing the line.
Well, there's always going to be those people, right, that are just, and they think it's patriotism, and it's not. But well, you can't criticize the United States, right? That's just wrong. You don't do that. That's not being patriotic, and we should lock you up for that. To me, again, that's crumbling up the Constitution. That's throwing it away. That's not being patriotic. That's not like why I served in the military. It's not why my family members served in the military, right? It was to kind of basically to shit on, the document that's controlled our government for over, 250 years, and to say that, well, that doesn't matter anymore. It does, whether, like you said, you're criticizing the government or you're going after people. I mean, he's going after people that look like me. It's like crazy, right? For
yep.
And me. He arrested, a mother who's taking care of her daughter, like in my district, who has cancer, and was like her only means of support, and trying to take that away, and just going after, right now, Abrego Garcia, who they already admitted that they deported. Oh, that was a mistake, but refuses to bring him back. And now he's trying to change the story. It's like, well, he has no criminal record or anything. And he's like, no, he's a violent criminal. He's what? Well, show us the proof. Show us the evidence. But this whole idea of getting rid of due process, and I think we're kind of right. You're talking about it, right? If he's doing it now to these individuals, like, well, they're not citizens, they're only here with a green card. He's trying to see how far he can get. So then, then it is going to be U.S. citizens. Then it is going to be like, oh, this person got picked up, and like, hey, what happened to Bob?
Yeah. So this relates back to the main conversation we're having. So how do you fight back against that?
Yeah.
So you can say, some folks say we don't even deport undocumented criminals, people who actually committed crimes. No, don't die on that hill, right? You commit crimes in America and you're undocumented, you got to go, son.
I say all the time too, right? It's like, we have got to lead as part of our messaging is that we want legal immigration, is that we want people to come into the country legally.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's got to be the starter right there. And if you just kind of go to like, we need to support the undocumented people, then, then people think you just want the open border.
Yeah. So, and that doesn't mean that you're in favor of mass deportation. That's two different things. Right. So, okay. Now can we actually, so more to the core of the issue, some friends on the left, right? And most of the time they're good, well-meaning people. We just have different strategies, right? And I'm not trying to cancel them. I'm just trying to say, hey, look, here's an alternative on how you deal with it, right? So on this issue, guys, I said that we can persuade some Trump voters to be on our side. And they said, no, all the Trump voters are racist, fascists, Nazis. Don't talk to the Trump voters. Or if you talk to them, just yell at them the entire time. Mm-hmm. But now look at the polling. Now he was above 50% for the first time ever, because he's always been unpopular, right? Mm-hmm. But it's just the Democratic Party has not fought back in a proper way. Okay, so now, though, he went from a little above 50, now he's down to 40 approval, 59 disapproval. So look at that. He's 19 points underwater just within 3 months. So how did we do that if we didn't persuade Trump voters? Because he won the popular vote. We did persuade Trump voters. We did. So don't give up on persuading Trump voters. Mm-hmm. And how do you persuade them? You do what Congressman Cisneros just did. We love the Constitution. The Constitution is ours. That flag is ours. We love the idea of America, right? I'm an immigrant. You're not. Your family was from California all along, right?
Well, I'd say we were annexed into the country.
That's right. And so, but I'm an immigrant. And why did I come to America? Because it's a great place. The idea of America is beautiful. Yeah. Equal opportunity for everyone, justice for all, hope, the American dream, etc. And that's what we want. We love the Constitution. So the minute you touch the Constitution, we're going to come for you. That's the right framing, because they already were told that they love America and the Constitution, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But then the right wing, a lot of times the radical right, which Trump is part of, then wants to twist it. Oh, the constitutional thing is to terminate the Constitution. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Yeah. And so can we get him down from 40 down to 30? The way he's going, yes. And so then what do? You take power away from him in 2026. You build a coalition that does popular things, that stands for the Constitution, that stands for America, that stands for the things that the Americans want, lower drug prices, lower housing prices, et cetera, and you get power back. That's how you defeat Trump, not by calling his voters racist and fascist. Get productive, please. Otherwise, you're being counterproductive and you're not helping in beating Trump. I say for Rebellion PAC, we're not here to hate Trump. We're here to beat Trump. It's a giant difference.
Yeah. Do you think that's different than what the Democrats tried to do in 2024, this past election cycle, which was essentially pivoting to the right on this issue and taking the Republican position?
On which issue?
On immigration. On saying how we supported this border bill and we are in agreement with Republicans, and the voters didn't buy that. So what's the change then?
Yeah. Well, no, the problem for Democrats on immigration wasn't necessarily their position or the position of the majority of Democratic legislators. The problem was that they really didn't control the border. So you can't like finesse a thing that isn't true, right? So I don't know why they didn't do it. I don't know what drove them, but Biden, he didn't have the border locked down well enough. And so and I give Trump credit on the very rare instances that he deserves it, because it's important to be honest. If you're not viewed as an honest actor, they're not going to listen to you, right? So did he close down the border effectively in the beginning of his administration this time around? Shockingly, he did. I'm literally shocked at how much it got closed down, which then made me angry at Biden. Because why didn't you do that? What? So like I'm okay with admitting the mistakes of the past, right? As long as we're still arguing for the right things. There's a country of immigrants. We love immigrants. Immigrants love this country as much as anyone else, if not more, right? And so, but at the same time, we have to do it in a legal way. We have to do it in a way that makes sense and that makes the country stronger, not weaker. Right. So you just frame it in the right way, have the right positions, but you can't open up the border and say, don't criticize me on that. You're not going to win on that. You have to do the right things.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate these messages. Is there anything else you'd like to add or let people know before we wrap up this episode?
Sure. Look, if you liked what we've been talking about here, check out the Young Turks every night, Monday through Friday. We start at 6 o'clock on YouTube. We're on every platform, but YouTube's the easiest way to watch. So you type in the Young Turks, you're going to get us. Don't worry. Okay. And so youtube.com/the Young Turks, 6 to 8 o'clock every night. And now at 8 o'clock, we're starting to do more interviews. We went away from interviews. We're going to do more. So Congressman, we'd love to have you on and actually do the thing we were talking about on this podcast. Give voice to Democrats in the media, et cetera, and fight back in the right ways. So check us out 6 to 8 p.m. live every day, Monday through Friday on YouTube on the Young Turks. And then the second thing is, please get involved. So if you like what I said about Rebellion PAC, go to rebellionpac.com. You could be a volunteer. You could actually, just like we did at Just Democrats, you could apply to be a candidate. No false promises. Like, it's tough to be a candidate, super tough, but you never know. When we did it for Just Democrats, it was her brother that nominated AOC, and the staff who did a brilliant job found AOC there and lifted her up, right? So we're trying to be as grassroots as humanly possible. You could apply to be a candidate, you could be a volunteer, you could donate. We're not taking any corporate PAC money, and nobody in the group is allowed to take corporate PAC money, okay? So that's why we need grassroots donors as well, and that's super important. If we don't do it Bernie style, where we get enough money collected together to be able to overpower the corporations, we won't be able to do it. So help us out, rebellionpac.com. And by the way, I live what I say, right? So if you say, hey, I don't like some of the things you said, and I'd rather be more pure, or I'd rather be more establishment, or I like Kamala Harris, or whatever it is, I love Hillary Clinton, then do that. Do that, right? And get involved in that way, but at least get in the fight, because if you lose hope, they win.
Right.
You cannot lose hope. The minute you sit on the couch and get depressed, oh, Trump is bad. Oh my God, we're all going to get put in gulags. I'm so depressed. I'm not going to do it. Don't. Then he wins. You're helping him win, right? Get out there and do something. Take action. Have hope in your heart. Let's go be productive. Let's go win back Congress and then win the presidency in 28.
You know, I say every movement's got to start with the people, right? So the people have to get involved if there's going to be a movement in order to defeat Trump in 26, which is your goal. And like I said earlier, I can't see anybody disagreeing on the Democratic side. I mean, maybe you'll find one or two, but that actually say, well, no, we don't want FMLA. We don't want affordable housing. We don't want a livable wage. It just, you know, we're all going to be fighting for that. So I think you're in the right direction there kind of going. So again, thanks for coming and being our first guest, and appreciate your time. And we'll have to find a time where we can get on your show.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you, Congressman Cisneros. Thank you, Max. A really great conversation.
All right. Thank you.